Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Menendez, for holding this hearing, and I want to thank Undersecretary Hale and Mr. String, Acting Legal Advisor, for your time today. As we've covered so far, 18 years ago, this body came together in the aftermath of 9/11 to pass a resolution authorizing the President to use force against those responsible for that heinous and cowardly attack, and that passed by overwhelming margins. But neither most of my colleagues nor the American people ever imagined that that 2001 vote would be used to justify U.S. force in places like Yemen or Libya or Somalia as it is today. In fact, my review concludes that only 18 senators who voted in favor of that resolution as senators in 2001 are still in office, and not one of the currently serving Foreign Relations Committee members voted for it as senators, although a few did as House members. So that means the overwhelming majority of us here today, more than 80% of the currently serving senators, have not voted either in favor or against the way our government is using military force today against international terrorist groups. Of course, I believe that we should continue to fight al-Qaeda and ISIS, but I think we need to update the authority we're using to make sure it's relevant to today's fight, to make sure it engages and sustains not just the consent but support of the American people. I believed this when President Obama was in office and advocated for it, and I continue to believe it today. The Constitution divides war-making power and responsibility between Congress and the President for good reason. And since 2001, I believe far too much power has gone to presidents of both parties. And Congress needs to do more to ensure that the executive branch seeks and gets permission of the people's branch before extending the authority to wage war to new geographies or new associated forces. I think we as elected leaders and policymakers owe it to the men and women who fight overseas on our behalf to debate the use of force. So let me briefly say a word about Iran. I do not believe either the 01 or 02 AUMFs authorized war with Iran. And I do not think that Iran can be linked to al-Qaeda, ISIS, or other associated forces detailed in those AUMFs. And I think the President, if he's contemplating using military force against Iran, must come to Congress to seek authorization. And I want to commend my colleague from New Mexico, Senator Udall, for leading an effort for us to have a vote on this issue and to continue to advance this issue. And I think given recent tensions with Iran, this committee should have an open, unclassified hearing on Iran with Secretary Pompeo or Brian Hook. I am concerned that after the President's unilateral withdrawal from the JCPOA, Iran's bad behavior has increased dramatically and our ability to rally our allies in the face of this provocation has decreased. So I welcome this conversation and think it's important we continue to have a say, not on how we used force 18 years ago, but how we're using it today and in the future. So Ambassador Hill, if I might, the Washington Post reported this week 1,000 ISIS fighters have crossed into Iraq, and there are reports that they've captured territory in Afghanistan as well. But what are we doing to ensure that ISIS doesn't retake territory in Iraq and Syria or simply shift its operations into new areas? And what's our strategy to end these conflicts? The caliphate as a geographic area may have ended, but I don't think the fight against ISIS is over.
Well, Senator, thank you for your comments and for your question. I certainly agree with you that the fight is not over. We are unfortunately going to have to continue to do everything we can to wrap this up. We have to continue the military pressure on ISIS fighters, but they have a remarkable ability to reconstitute themselves in stateless areas, which is what you've just referred to. I don't have specific facts to confirm the Washington Post story, but this is the kind of phenomena that we have seen before from ISIS, and our strategy is not just military pressure, but I think more significantly to build up the capacity of our partner nations in the region, the leadership of Iraq, the leadership of Afghanistan, so that they are capable of dealing with this problem and to eliminate the stateless areas that are unfortunately the breeding ground for this phenomenon.
One of my concerns is that we not lose focus in the ongoing fight against ISIS as the administration and many of us shift focus to Iranian actions in the Gulf as we lost focus on Afghanistan when we went to war in Iraq. Mr. String, if all the forces we're currently fighting around the world are covered by the 01 AUMF, why do we need the 02 AUMF at all? If the 02 AUMF were repealed, is there something we're currently doing around the world that would have to stop?
Thank you, Senator. I had a good discussion with your staff about this question as well the other day.
I cannot point to a discrete set of operations that would be exclusively authorized right now under only the 2002 AUMF, but this is how we think about it. In 2011, the situation in Iraq was very different than it was today. We thought in 2011 the need for an AUMF with respect to Iraq was abating. The situation changed very quickly in Iraq, and the previous administration made a decision that the 2002 AUMF may have become more relevant again. So there's an ongoing relevance for both our operations in Syria as a source of a supplemental authority for Syria and Iraq. Secondly, we continue to rely on the 2002 AUMF for certain detention activities. We've cited this provision in recent litigation, and so we do continue to rely on it in the courts, in the third branch of government.
I do think we should be capable enough and strong enough to provide continuing authorities for appropriate detention activities and authorization for ongoing conflict without relying on, I think, now badly outdated authorities. Let me just, in closing, reference a letter that I led with 4 colleagues about the condition of hundreds of American citizens, including 230 children stranded in Malaysia with their Yemeni families waiting to obtain visas to the United States. The travel ban, the so-called Muslim ban, does not have the sort of functioning exemption process that had been proffered in court, and I have not yet gotten a response to a letter about these cases of hundreds of stranded citizens. Will I get a response from the administration to this letter of last month?
Thank you, Senator. I have not seen the letter, but I will look into it and ensure that we can get you all the information you need in response to that.
Happy to make sure you have a copy today. I just want to join my colleague from New Jersey in his concerns about the phrase, "We have not interpreted to date either AUMF." I think as a policy matter, not as a matter of lawyering carefully, the administration has to consult and get the approval of Congress before beginning any conflict with Iran. Thank you.